Welcome to Count Me In. I'm your host, Adam Larson, and today I'm joined by Jameson Galey, a finance professional with an inspiring and unconventional journey. From taking just 2 accounting classes in college to landing his first job in the industry by chance, Jameson quickly rose through the ranks to become CFO at 29. Along the way, he navigated industry pivots, the onset of COVID-19, and even started his own online accounting firm. Now he's on a mission to make accounting fun and accessible for everyone through his new platform, Ledgeroo. Whether you're an accounting pro or just interested in unique career stories, you'll find something to take away from today's episode. Let's dive right in. Well, Jameson, I'm glad to have you on the podcast today. And today we're just going to be talking a little bit about your story because you have a very unique story, and I'm really excited to just share this with our audience. And so, to start off, what initially drew you to the field of accounting?
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, Adam. Big fan of the podcast. And as you know, I'm a CMA as well. So big fan of the IMA in general. So yeah, kind of interesting track. I actually studied entrepreneurship at USC. I was in the business school. I only took 2 accounting courses there. Tried like sales, marketing, PR, a few different things out of college and wasn't really kind of finding my niche. And then I was like, you know what? I actually really loved those 2 accounting courses I took. Like I'm going to just kind of on a whim, like see if I can get a job in accounting, maybe go back to school, become a CPA. I was actually working for a television production company at the time. And I kind of talked to some of the accountants there and was like kind of telling them about my plan. And literally the next day, the CFO walked over to my desk and he was like, "Hey, I need like a head corporate accountant, like my first entry level guy. Like, do you want the job?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So kind of just jumped into it. Super lucky to have that happen. And then like just kind of absolutely fell in love with it. So my kind of, the fact that I really like those 2 courses, like really actually paid off.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny. I took a couple of accounting courses during my master's program, and I was like, no, this is not where I want to go. And so it's interesting how when you take those courses, everybody has a different feel for it, right?
Pretty funny. There was a really good teacher at USC. His name was Merle Hopkins. I don't know if he's still there, but great accounting teacher, taught the huge accounting 101 to the whole business school. And he was actually missing like a pinky finger. And there used to be like a rumor going around that he had been like counting cards in Vegas or something. So who knows if that's true, but I gave him credit for like kind of making it fun and really bringing me into it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're a CMA, and so you became certified. So what was that like working full time in these different things and trying to become certified in the same time?
Yeah. So I would say, for the first 6 months, I didn't do anything except work and just kind of get my feet up and kind of get going. And then I was like, all right, this was the right call. Like, I'm actually loving this. I want to kind of just rise in my career and pursue more and more. So started taking online courses through UCLA Extension. And essentially what I just did is I got in early, a couple hours early every morning for years. And I just studied accounting online through UCLA Extension, got enough credits to combine with my business degree. And then I sat for the CPA exams, became a CPA. Honestly, loved the experience of studying so much that then I went on to do the CMA exams as well, like just for the fun of it. I was like absolutely just loving that experience of learning and working at the same time.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I commend you because I know that's not easy to do, especially trying to go in a little early and try to study something and then do your work and then do other things outside. It can be very taxing on you, but obviously it was very rewarding.
Absolutely. I honestly think back of it as like a really fun time. It was just like this kind of like discovery period of like learning on my own. And I'm a big student, love school, always have. So it was like
Mhm.
the, the thrill of getting back in and just like cracking open a huge textbook is like a huge challenge to me. And I just like ate it up.
So you mentioned that you work for some, big production companies who did TV shows during your career. What was it like working for those organizations, especially in the financial perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really cool industry, honestly, to be on the accounting finance side. It's interesting to see a lot of that. So yeah, I worked for a company called Kinetic Content, which is actually ended up being like a huge success story. So when I joined, they were probably like 10 million in revenue, and over a 5-year period, we grew to about 90 million. And a big part of that was they didn't create it, but they brought the Married at First Sight franchise over. I think it was originally created by a different company, Denmark, I believe it was, but they brought that to the US and like made a huge deal out of it. I don't know if it's still going or not, but it was on like season 17 at some point a couple of years ago. But and then they also did Little Women LA. They went on to do Love is Blind. So they had some really big hits. Chris Cole and the guy's CEO, he's a really, really smart dude. So being on the finance side, it's really cool. It's a cost plus model. So it's like you learn pretty early on. The goal is to kind of get the biggest budgets you can get and kind of keep getting in there and increasing the number of hours and things like that. But it's actually really interesting. It's kind of this like shell game where, the production comp or the studios that are like hiring you to produce the show, they're only going to pay you a 10% production fee because it's cost plus. There's all kinds of tricks these production companies do to increase their margins. And within the budget, there'll be like a weekly camera rental. But then the production company will set up a different LLC, buy some cameras, and then it will actually be renting to itself. It's like you've got, production accountants on staff that you're renting out to your different productions. It becomes this kind of game of how can you get like to a critical mass of content, and then you can actually build up that force and start kind of renting things back to yourself and increase your margins that way. So it's kind of a fun, interesting game.
Wow, that does sound interesting. Were there elements within like the CPA or CMA exam or things that you had to learn in studying for those that kind of helped you prepare you for what you had to encounter while trying to do those financials?
Absolutely. Television accounting, it's the revenue recognition method is POC, percentage of completion. So it can actually be kind of complex when you're accounting for these multi-million dollar television projects that sometimes last over a year, things like that. So there was a lot of, deferred revenue, accounts receivable, POC. There was a whole kind of system that I helped build out to kind of forecast and track all that. So, everything I was learning in the CMA and CPA exams was constantly applicable to what I was doing on a daily basis. And what I liked about the CMA exams particularly is like CPA, there's a lot of audit and tax focus, which never frankly interested me. It's like I crammed for those exams and just kind of like forgot the stuff immediately after. It's like I've always been into like the actual working within companies, business strategy, risk management, decision making, all the kind of stuff that the CMA, really focuses on. It's like really meant for people like me that wanted to be a financial executive. So super helpful across the board.
Definitely. And then from there you transition on to becoming a CFO at quite a young age. How was it like that adapting to being a CFO at a young age, especially the pressures of that position and, all the weight that comes with that?
Sure. Yeah, I got really lucky. I became a CFO at 29. That I'm sure there are people out there that have also done it. But for me personally, it would have never happened if it wasn't kind of for this very lucky happenstance, which is that the company Kinetic Content I was working for 5 years. They were owned by a German parent company that owned about 20 different production companies around the world, and I got to be super close with them, just doing month-end finance calls for 5 years straight. You can just imagine, just month after month, developed a really good relationship with them. And they had another company in downtown LA that they actually just moved me to be the CFO of. It was called Cargo 7 Pictures. Um, so it was, yeah, super lucky, fortunate opportunity. Was very grateful for it, took the leap. And it's actually pretty funny. It was December of 2019, actually, that I made the jump. So within like a 90, I actually got married around that time too. So within like a 90-day period, I got married, I became a CFO, and then COVID hit. So it
Man.
was like, yeah, that 90 days was like, it was a lot of change in my life. And, you know, it was, you just kind of, I have a habit of just kind of throwing myself into situations and kind of just making sure I swim. And I think it's like anything, I think I encourage people to take the leap and figure it out because you will. And, there were definite times when I had to pretend like I kind of was a little bit more solid than I felt on the inside being a CFO. And all of a sudden it's like, there's no one else you can really point to or look to for answers or things like that. So that was definitely a new experience, especially being in a creative world because like typically, I mean, each company's probably different. But like the CEO and the partners, they're probably going to be like creative people. So there's really not going to be anybody that you can kind of talk to about finance or whatever. You're probably going to be kind of on an island a little bit.
Yeah, did you have a big team that you were working with as a CFO, or was it a more small organization? You're dealing with big budgets though.
Yeah, we did about 20 million in revenues a year, 2025. The company had been around for about 8 years. I had 3 people working underneath me when I joined. And then, you can scale up like production accountants maybe for a short period of time or something, depending on the level of production and the volume you have at that time.
So what was it like navigating COVID during the worst part of COVID, especially a lot of production companies couldn't shoot anything for a long time there.
Yeah, we were actually really lucky because a big part of production is you go out and you shoot the stuff, obviously, and then you have it in the can, and then you have to spend time editing it. And we got really lucky because we had actually just gone out and shot a bunch of stuff. So we were actually able to, remote edit from home and then still be releasing things and delivering the items we needed to get the revenue in from our customers. So we got lucky that way. And it's funny when you look back, it's like everybody I think was accounting was one of those things that you just assumed like could not be done remotely. It's like, how are we going to sign checks and how are we going to do this? And it just like within weeks, it was like, oh, this is super easy, so. But yeah, there was a total production shutdown across the industry. We got lucky. I think we borrowed some money from our parent company. We did some layoffs. We got through it.
So what was your next career decision after the CFO of that production company?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I was there for about 2.5 years, survived COVID. We kind of steadied out. And then actually the original owners of the company decided they kind of wanted to break away from the German parent company, kind of start over and do their own thing. And they didn't really have a place for a CFO in their new kind of scaled down role. So the whole thing just kind of dismantled in like an amicable way. And so I basically found myself looking for a new job after being a CFO for about 2.5 years. And it was interesting. So I started reaching out to recruiters and they were all incredibly pessimistic. It was like, you became a CFO way too early. Your resume is all off. No one's going to ever make you a CFO again. Not again, but right now it's just not going to happen for you. And you've only ever done accounting and finance in the television industry. So it's like, basically they're telling me like, you're going to sit there and wait for like a number two position of a TV production company to open up. And who knows when that'll happen. It was like very pessimistic. So, my wife and I had really enjoyed like, being remote during COVID. And it was kind of like, I would love to continue the remote lifestyle. I'm a big fan of this. So I made the decision to kind of open up my like own online accounting firm. And I was like, I'm just going to find my own clients. I'm going to just do my own thing. And I believe that I have a lot of value to add to any organization. Like I'm not going to sit around and wait to be pigeonholed into the right role or whatever. Like I'm going to go do it myself. I made that decision. And then within a couple of weeks, I was on Craigslist of all places, hustling, trying to find my first clients. And, bumped into this guy who was a serial entrepreneur, and he read he put a post on Craigslist that said, "Need a CPA 1 day a week." That's all it said, and I replied to it, and it was for one startup he was running. But then we started talking. He saw my resume, and he was like, "Actually, I would love you to come on board, be a full-time CFO of this other startup I'm running." So, I felt pretty good about that. I was like, you know what? I'll shelve the online accounting firm. This is an incredible opportunity. I'm going to go with it. So the recruiters called me later and they were like, "Hey, you need a secondary role in a TV production company." I was like, "No, I'm actually the CFO of a tech startup. Thank you." Like figured it out all on my own. But yeah, no, I got really lucky. And I think it just goes to show like, I was willing to hustle on Craigslist for, $35 an hour or whatever it took to get that firm off the ground. And, it really paid off. So I'm actually still involved with that company. I've been the CFO there for about 3 years now.
Wow. So what was like transitioning from one industry to another? Because sometimes it's different, sometimes it's not. I mean, the accounting stays the same, but what was it like transitioning?
Yeah, I would actually counter that. The accounting definitely does not stay the same in certain cases. So, yeah, it's interesting. I call it a tech company because it kind of was and is tech focused, but it actually was like a manufacturing company when I first joined. So that was a big change. We had this kind of proprietary solar technology that absorbs solar energy and then is able to like make signs light up at night automatically. So, you see those, signs these days with like the solar panels affixed to the outside or near them or whatever, but these were actually like built into the sign itself so you couldn't see them. And so we were manufacturing those in house. So it was a big change from, purely the service model and entertainment to, direct labor and manufacturing overhead and tracking and calculating all that. And, it was a lot, but, I bought a couple textbooks on inventory management and cost accounting and just like dug in and I loved it. That was like kind of the biggest change for me. And it was a opportunity to kind of build out a whole new system because like most startups, they didn't really have a lot of good infrastructure in place. And,
Yeah.
it was actually really cool too. It was like when I worked previously, I was part of that group of like 20 production companies. They had like a very high level TM1 software that did all the planning and tracking and everything. Nothing like this at the startup. So it was the first time that I actually had to build out like a full FP&A system in Excel by myself with the actuals, forecasts, budgeting. And I just feel like I learned so much during that process. My Excel skills like dramatically improved. And that's why I would encourage people to work for small businesses and startups because when there's not that infrastructure and you have to kind of build it yourself, it can be a great opportunity.
Well, it was hands-on experience and something that maybe if you're working for a very large organization, you'd be a part of the team choosing it and being a part of it, but to build it from the ground up with the foundation that you've learned and from the certifications you have to all the experience you have to be able to build that your own foundation is an invaluable experience, really.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to circle to your other startup you have, which is called Ledgeroo. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, again, we spoke earlier about, I told you how much I love learning and, love accounting. These are kind of my two great passions. And basically, I was using Duolingo a few years ago. I was actually learning German because I was working for the German parent company, and I love Duolingo, love learning. And I was like, there should really be a fun way to learn accounting kind of in this way. It should be gamified, it should be fun, broken down into bite-sized lessons. And so it took me a few years, but I actually started working on the project, excuse me, over the last year. And we actually have an MVP now. We're out in the market, and people are using it every day. We've got people that have already come on and done hundreds and hundreds of problems. They're learning. We just launched in the last 30 days. Super excited to see the early traction we're seeing. And honestly, I'm so thrilled to have it be out in the world and really enjoying it and learning. And I think the future is really bright for the business.
Definitely. So, who is your main audience for this? Are you trying to get young accountants to come in and learn it in a better way? Or are you trying to get people from all around the organization to understand what accounting's doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, obviously I have some early investors, and that's a common question that I've had to kind of tackle along the way. And the answer right now is I think it's actually broader. I've got a mix of people already using the site. I've got people who are pursuing accounting degrees, people who have just graduated with finance degrees who want to bolster their accounting skills a little bit. I've got a COO of a company. I've got a head of business analytics of a company. So I think it's actually pretty broad. That is kind of my dream, is how can I make it as ubiquitous and global as possible? It's really not to kind of hone in on any one, small demographic of accounting students. It's I genuinely believe these skills should be transferable and universal. And my dream is that, people from all walks of life will be using this product, and it will help them grow in their careers, start businesses, improve their communities. I really want it to be as, universal as possible.
Do you think there's different stigmas that can surround accounting that would prohibit people from saying, I don't want to do a game about accounting?
Absolutely. Accounting kind of has this bad reputation as being sort of boring and tedious and all these things. And it's actually so cool and it's so empowering, and there's so much structure and symmetry to it. And it's that's the big hurdle, is can I get people to just kind of start trying it because it looks a little bit fun and it's a little bit more lighthearted, and then be like, wow, this is so cool. I can actually apply this in so many different ways. Because my belief is that if you work in business, no matter what role you're in, you should have a firm understanding of, how to read financial statements. Absolutely. And it's this is kind of what we're here to help people learn.
That's awesome. So what are your goals for Ledgeroo going forward, and for your career as well? Because you've jumped to a lot of different things, and it's pretty exciting to hear.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want this to be the next 20 years of my life, honestly. So, we're already seeing the user growth. It's really exciting. I'm super passionate about it. Nothing would make me happier than to run this business for the next 20 years. Just continue to find ways to add more and more content, more and more gamification, reach a broader audience. It's my dream goal in life to wake up and just kind of build this thing every day.
Well, Jameson, I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast. It's great that you could we're willing to share your story with our audience, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. Been a pleasure.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.